probably recognize the name of the great Benny Goodman, one of our great clarinets. He was born in 1909. His father was a tailor from Warsaw who had come over, had met his mother, who was from Lithuania. They actually met in Baltimore where we lived for a while, and they got married there and then immediately left and went off to Chicago. And they would have 12 children, 3 boys and 9 girls. The father was unable to find work as a tailor, so like many at that time, took whatever job he could get. And here's how Benny later described it. Pop worked in the stockyards, shoveling lard in its unrefined state. He had these boots, and he'd come home at the end of the day exhausted, stinking to high heaven. And when he walked in, it made me sick. I couldn't stand it. I couldn't stand the idea of Pop every day standing in that stuff, shoveling it around. But they really wanted to give the kids, or at least the boys, some music lessons at the Kahela Jacob Synagogue, where they're free lessons. So tell me the story of the guys' names again, all the kids.
Oh, okay, so David Goodman went down to their synagogue, Kahela Jacob. Perhaps you've heard of it. I think it's a franchise. Anyway, he went down with 3 of his boys, none of his daughters, sorry. The oldest of the Goodman boys who went down that day was Harry Goodman. He was 16 years old, and by all accounts, a pretty stocky 16-year-old kid. They took one look at him and said, "Son, you're going to play the tuba." And that became his instrument, and Harry Goodman would play the tuba. He'd eventually switch to the double bass, and would actually play double bass in the Benny Goodman Orchestra for many years, being, in most people's opinion, the worst musical link in that organization. Next in age was Freddie Goodman. He was 12, also a decent-sized kid. They took a look at him and said, "All right, you're going to play trombone." Handed him a trombone, and indeed he would play semi-professionally. But the youngest of the Goodman boys who went down that day was 9-year-old Benny, and by all accounts, a pretty scrawny 9-year-old. They took one look at him and said, "Oh, we're sorry, son. You're going to have to play clarinet." And that's how his instrument was chosen for him.
So he got stuck with the clarinet, but he did pretty good stuff with it, and started already playing when he was young, 14 or 15 years old. In fact, the day of his first kind of professional performance, his father was struck and killed by a streetcar and would die. So he never saw his son become the great man that he was. Now, he put his band together, and they started experimenting with this kind of more upbeat tunes, upbeat kind of jazz in 1934, early 1930s, called swing, which would ultimately take over. The first known swing concert was at the Palomar Ballroom in 1935. The Benny Goodman Band played the first half of that concert. The audience didn't seem really into it. They were sort of not paying a lot of attention. So at intermission, Gene Krupa, the drummer for the band, went to Benny Goodman. He said, "Benny, if we're going to die out there, we should die playing what we want to play." And so they sort of turned up the tempo in the second half, and swing really sort of took off right there. And within 3 years, there would be a concert at Carnegie Hall in New York on January 16th, 1938, with the Benny Goodman Band, described as the single most important jazz concert in history. It was jazz's coming out party to the world of respectable music. And as another critic, Will Friedwald, said, "In bringing jazz to Carnegie Hall, Benny Goodman was, in effect, smuggling American contraband into the halls of European high culture. And Goodman and his men pulled it off with the audacity and precision of Ocean's 11. So it went very well. They sold out the whole house, all 2,700 seats. The high price was $2.75. That was a good time. Ultimately, it would just become a huge hit. And we'll talk a little bit afterwards about how the swing and the Yiddish tunes started going together. He was also really important for integrating his band, one of the first to have an integrated band. As he said once, "If a guy's got it, let him give it. I'm selling music, not prejudice." And so they would go down south and make sure that they all could play together on the same stage. He was known as sort of a man who never stopped, who really just worked very hard. Glenn Miller once came to him asking how he could start his own band. Benny Goodman said, "I don't know how you get started, but I do know, whatever you do, once you get started, don't stop. You got to keep on going." And he really worked hard, but he did know how to have fun. At the end, he said, "After you've done all the work and prepared as much as you can, what the heck, you might as well go out and have a good time." So his music has that sort of fun to it. We're going to play two little tunes of his, one called Benjie's Bubble. Benjie was actually his daughter, so this was written for her, and then another one called Tattletale. So here's the Benny Goodman sound.
One of my favorite jazz clarinetists, Pee Wee Russell, had a quote that kind of hits a little too close to home for me, but he said, there's plenty of money to be made playing jazz clarinet. Problem is, Benny Goodman has already made all of it.